The cargo bay of Epsilon Trading Station smelled like metal and old grease. Kael'thor sat alone on a stack of supply crates, his massive frame casting long shadows under the dim lights. At 12 feet tall, he had to duck through most doorways on the station. His forearms rested on his knees as he stared at nothing in particular. Around him, the usual activity continued. Human workers moved boxes. Alien traders haggled over prices. Ships docked and left with mechanical groans. But nobody came near Kael'thor. They never did. A group of Zentari merchants walked past, their scales gleaming under the lights. When they noticed Kael'thor, they quickly changed direction. One of them whispered something to the others. They all nodded and hurried away faster. Kael'thor was used to this. He had been working security on Epsilon Station for 3 months now, and every day was the same. He did his job well. He patrolled the corridors. He stopped fights before they started. He made sure the cargo bay stayed secure. But when his shift ended, he returned to his quarters alone. The Varathians were not welcome anywhere in the galaxy. 50 years ago, his people had tried to conquer half the known systems. They had been fierce warriors, unstoppable in battle. Many species still remembered the wars. They remembered the fear. Even though the Varathian Empire had fallen decades ago, the hatred remained. Kael'thor understood this. He did not blame them. His people had caused terrible pain. But understanding did not make the loneliness easier to bear. He checked the time on his wrist device. His break would end in 10 minutes. He would return to his patrol, walk the corridors and watch people avoid him. Then he would go back to his small room and eat dinner alone. Tomorrow would be exactly the same. The sound of footsteps made him look up. A human was walking toward him, carrying 2 metal containers. The human was young, maybe 30 years old, with dark hair and tired eyes. He wore the yellow uniform of a cargo supervisor. Kael'thor tensed. Usually, humans walked away when they saw him. This one was coming closer. Was something wrong? Had he made a mistake during his patrol? The human stopped a few feet away. He held up one of the containers. "Hi," the human said. "I'm Marcus. Marcus Chen. I just started working here last week." He gestured to the container in his hand. "I brought extra food from the cafeteria. Thought you might be hungry." Kael'thor stared at him. His translator chip worked perfectly, so he understood the words. But he could not understand why this human was talking to him. Why he was offering food, why? Kael'thor asked. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. Marcus looked confused. "Why what? Why do you offer me food?" Kael'thor said slowly. "Why do you come near me?" Marcus shrugged. "Because you look like you could use some company. And because I had extra food. That's all." Kael'thor's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of confusion among his people. This human was either very brave or very foolish. "Maybe both. Do you know what I am?" Kael'thor asked. "Yeah," Marcus said. He sat down on a nearby crate. Not too close, but not far away either. "You're Varathian. I've read about your people. About the wars." He opened his food container and started eating. But that was a long time ago. Before either of us was born. Kael'thor watched this human eat casually, as if sitting near a Varathian warrior was the most normal thing in the galaxy. It made no sense. "Your people fear mine," Kael'thor said. "Some do," Marcus agreed. "But I prefer to judge people by their actions, not their species." He looked at Kael'thor directly. "You've been here 3 months. I checked the security reports. 0 incidents. You do your job well. You don't cause trouble. That tells me more than any history book." For the first time in months, Kael'thor felt something strange in his chest. It took him a moment to recognize the feeling. Hope. He reached out with one of his forearms and took the offered food container. It was small in his large hand, but the gesture was everything. "Thank you," he said quietly. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Marcus did not seem uncomfortable. He just ate his food and looked around the cargo bay as if this was a normal lunch break. "So," Marcus said finally, "how did you end up here? On Epsilon Station?" Kael'thor considered not answering. He had not told his story to anyone in years. But something about this human made him want to try. "I was exiled from my homeworld," Kael'thor said. "I refused an order from my commander. He told me to execute prisoners, civilians who had surrendered. I said no." Marcus stopped eating. "You refused because it was wrong. Yes, among my people, honor is everything. But there is no honor in killing those who cannot fight back. Kael'thor looked at his hands. My commander called me weak. He exiled me. Now I work small jobs on forgotten stations. It is all I can do. That took courage, Marcus said quietly. Standing up for what's right when everyone else tells you you're wrong. That's harder than any battle. Kael'thor looked at this small human who saw him not as a monster, but as a person who had made a difficult choice. Something warm grew in his chest. Something he had not felt since leaving his homeworld. Not hope this time, but something better. Connection. Across the cargo bay, other workers had noticed Marcus sitting with Kael'thor. They whispered to each other and pointed. Some looked angry. Others looked scared. But Marcus did not seem to care. A Tyrellian supervisor approached them, her 6 legs clicking on the metal floor. She stopped a safe distance away. Chen, she said, her voice sharp. I need to speak with you now. Marcus stood up slowly. Sure, boss, just finishing my break. Your break ended 5 minutes ago, the supervisor said. She glanced at Kael'thor nervously. And I specifically warned you about fraternizing with security personnel. You said don't distract them from their duties. Marcus replied calmly. Kael'thor's on his break, same as I was. We were just having lunch. The supervisor's mandibles clicked together in frustration. She clearly wanted to say more, but could not find a good reason to forbid 2 employees from eating lunch together during their breaks. Just get back to work, she said finally, and scurried away. Marcus turned back to Kael'thor and smiled. Looks like I'm popular already. He picked up his empty container. Same time tomorrow? I usually take my break around now. Kael'thor did not know what to say. Nobody had ever wanted to see him again. Nobody had ever suggested meeting a second time. Yes, he said finally. Tomorrow, Marcus grinned. Great. Maybe you can tell me more about Varathian culture. I'm curious about your people. The real story, not the propaganda. He walked away, leaving Kael'thor alone with his thoughts. But this time the loneliness felt different. Lighter somehow. Kael'thor looked down at the empty food container in his hand. Such a small thing. Such a simple gesture. But in that moment it meant everything. For the first time in 3 months, Kael'thor found himself looking forward to tomorrow. One human had taken a risk. One human had chosen to see past fear and hatred. One human had offered friendship when the entire galaxy offered nothing but empty stares and whispered warnings. As Kael'thor stood and prepared to return to his patrol, he realized something important. Marcus Chen had given him something more valuable than food. He had given him hope that maybe, just maybe, he was not as alone as he thought. And in the vast darkness of space, on a forgotten trading station at the edge of known territory, that hope was enough to change everything. Marcus showed up the next day at the same time, carrying 2 food containers again. Kael'thor was already waiting in the cargo bay, though he would never admit he had arrived 10 minutes early. Hey, Marcus said, sitting down on the same crate as yesterday. Hope you like noodles. The cafeteria was serving something called Antarian pasta today. Kael'thor took the offered container. The food smelled strange but not unpleasant. He ate slowly, watching Marcus from the corner of his eye. So, Marcus said between bites, you mentioned honor yesterday. Is that a big part of Varathian culture? Everything, Kael'thor replied. A Varathian without honor is not truly Varathian. We live by a code. Protect the weak. Fight with courage. Keep our promises. Never take advantage of those who cannot defend themselves. But the wars. Marcus began, then stopped. Sorry, that's probably a difficult subject. No, Kael'thor said. You should ask. Everyone thinks about it, but you are the only one brave enough to speak the question aloud. He set down his food. During the wars, many Varathians forgot their honor. They were blinded by pride and the desire for conquest. They convinced themselves that might made right. That strength gave them permission to take what they wanted. They were wrong, Marcus nodded slowly. And that's why you were exiled. Because you remembered what honor really meant. Yes, but I am one among millions. Most of my people still believe the old ways were correct. They think I am the one who lost his honor, not them. Kael'thor looked at his 4 hands. Sometimes I wonder if they are right. They're not, Marcus said firmly. You stood up for what was right even when it cost you everything. That's real courage. That's real honor. Over the next few weeks, their lunch meetings became routine. Marcus brought food and they talked. Kael'thor learned that Marcus had grown up on Earth, in a city called San Francisco. He had worked on cargo ships since he was 20, traveling from station to station. He liked books and old Earth music, especially something called jazz. In return, Kael'thor told Marcus about his homeworld, about the red skies and the crystal mountains, about Varathian philosophy and poetry, about the traditional combat dances his people performed before battle, movements that were both beautiful and deadly. "I wish I could see one of those dances," Marcus said one day. Kael'thor was quiet for a moment. Then he stood up. The cargo bay was mostly empty during their break time. Slowly he began to move. His forearms flowed through ancient patterns. His feet, despite his massive size, moved with perfect grace. It was a warrior's dance, but also an artist's creation. Marcus watched in silence, his eyes wide. When Kael'thor finished, he sat back down, feeling oddly vulnerable. "That was incredible," Marcus said quietly. "Thank you for sharing that with me." But not everyone on the station was happy about their friendship. Other workers watched them with suspicious eyes. The whispers grew louder. Marcus's supervisor called him into her office. "Chen, we need to talk about your behavior," she said, her mandibles clicking nervously. "My behavior?" Marcus asked, though he knew exactly what she meant. "Your fraternization with the Varathian. It makes the other workers uncomfortable. Some have complained." She tapped her desk with one leg. "I'm not ordering you to stop, but I am suggesting that you reconsider this friendship. For your own good. With respect, boss, Kael'thor is a good person. He does his job well. He's never caused any problems. The only issue is that people judge him based on his species instead of his actions." The supervisor sighed. Her antennae drooped. "Marcus, I understand your perspective. I even admire it. But you're new here. You don't understand the history. The Varathians killed billions during the wars. Billions. Many people on this station lost family members. You're asking them to forget." "I'm not asking anyone to forget," Marcus said. "I'm just asking them to see Kael'thor as an individual, not as a representative of his entire species. He wasn't even alive during the wars, that may be true, but his presence reminds them of their pain." She looked at him with all 6 of her eyes. "Be careful, Marcus. This friendship could cost you more than you realize." Marcus left the office feeling angry, not at his supervisor, who genuinely seemed concerned for him, but at the unfairness of it all. Kael'thor was being punished for crimes he did not commit, for a war he did not fight. He found Kael'thor in their usual spot, but the Varathian looked troubled. "You should stop coming here," Kael'thor said without greeting. "What? Why, I hear the whispers. I see the looks people give you now. They judge you for spending time with me. This friendship is damaging your reputation. It might cost you your position." Marcus sat down firmly on his usual crate. "Let me worry about my reputation. You're my friend, Kael'thor. I don't abandon my friends just because it's inconvenient." "Friend?" Kael'thor repeated the word slowly, as if testing its weight. "I have not had a friend in many years. I had forgotten what it felt like." "Well, you have one now," Marcus said, "and I'm not going anywhere." One day, Marcus brought something different instead of food. A small portable screen. "I want to show you something," he said, activating the device. "This is chess. It's an old Earth game, strategy and tactics. I thought you might like it." Kael'thor learned quickly. His warrior's mind understood strategy naturally. Within days, their matches were competitive. They played during every break, barely speaking, focused entirely on the game. Other workers noticed. A few stopped to watch from a distance, fascinated despite themselves. One young Delphian engineer even asked if she could play the winner. Marcus happily agreed, and soon there was an informal chess tournament in the cargo bay. People were still wary of Kael'thor, but the chess games created a neutral space. They could watch him play without directly interacting. They could see him think and plan and even laugh when Marcus made a clever move. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he became less of a monster and more of a person in their eyes. One evening, after a particularly intense game, Kael'thor did something unexpected. With all 4 arms, he performed a traditional Varathian gesture, touching his chest, then his forehead, then extending his hands toward Marcus. "What does that mean?" Marcus asked. "It is how we honor someone who has shown us great kindness. It means my heart recognizes your heart. My mind honors your mind. My strength is your strength." Kael'thor paused. "In my language, my full name is Kelthorak Shemnai. Kael is my personal name. Thorak means shield. Shemnai means innocent or defenseless. Together it means Shield of the Innocent. You never told me your full name before, Marcus said. Among my people, to share one's full name is to show trust, to invite someone into your family circle. Kael'thor's voice was soft. You are the first person in 3 years I have trusted enough to share this. Marcus felt the weight of this gift. He stood, and though he was less than half Kael'thor's height, he tried to copy the gesture. His movements were clumsy, but Kael'thor's eyes brightened with appreciation. Thank you for trusting me, Marcus said. Shield of the Innocent. That's a good name. A name that fits you. That night, as Marcus returned to his quarters, he passed a group of workers huddled together, whispering. When they saw him, they fell silent. But one of them, an older human woman, stopped him. Chen, she said quietly, be careful. There are people on this station who don't like what you're doing. They think you're betraying your own kind. There's talk of teaching you a lesson. Thanks for the warning, Marcus said. But I'm not going to stop being friends with Kael'thor just because some people disapprove. She shook her head sadly. I figured you'd say that. Just watch your back. Marcus returned to his quarters feeling uneasy. The warning was clear. His friendship with Kael'thor had made him enemies. But as he lay in bed that night, he thought about the Varathian warrior who had chosen honor over acceptance, who had been alone for 3 years, who had finally found one person willing to see him as he truly was. Whatever the cost, Marcus decided it was worth it. Some bridges were meant to be crossed no matter how many people warned you away. Some friendships were worth fighting for, and Kael'thor, Shield of the Innocent, was worth every risk. The alarm woke Marcus at 3 in the morning. Not his personal alarm, but the station-wide emergency signal. Red lights flashed in his quarters as the automated voice repeated the same message over and over. All personnel report to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Unidentified ships approaching. All personnel report to emergency stations. Marcus pulled on his clothes and ran to the cargo bay. Other workers were already there, looking scared and confused. The supervisor was trying to organize everyone, but her voice kept cracking with stress. What's happening? Marcus asked a Zentari co-worker. Pirates, the Zentari said, his scales turning pale. 3 ships. They attacked a freighter 2 hours ago. Now they're heading here. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Epsilon Station had minimal defenses. They relied on being in neutral territory, on not being worth the trouble to attack. But if pirates were desperate enough, they would hit anything. Kael'thor appeared at the entrance to the cargo bay, fully armed in his security armor. His forearms carried weapons and his face was set in a warrior's expression. He moved through the crowd toward the supervisor. Report, he said simply. The supervisor pulled up a holographic display. 3 red dots approached the station from the outer rim. Karvik Syndicate. Known pirates. They'll be in weapons range in 20 minutes. Where is the rest of security? Kael'thor asked. Scattered across the station. Communications are being jammed. You're the only security officer in this sector. Kael'thor studied the display for a moment, then started giving orders. His voice was calm but commanding. He told the supervisor to seal off certain corridors. He organized the workers into groups and assigned them safe positions. He moved with confidence, with authority, and despite their fear of him, people listened. Because in that moment, he was their best chance of survival. Marcus helped evacuate civilians to the inner decks. The station shuddered as the pirates opened fire on the outer hull. Distant explosions echoed through the corridors. Then the hull breach alarm started screaming. The pirates had docked. They were boarding the station. Kael'thor positioned himself at the main corridor leading to the cargo bay. Through the security cameras, Marcus watched as the first pirates appeared. They were Karviks, insectoid creatures with mandibles and multiple legs, armed and aggressive. What happened next, Marcus would never forget. Kael'thor moved like death itself. His forearms worked independently, each holding a weapon, each finding targets. He was fast, impossibly fast for someone his size. The traditional combat dances Marcus had seen became terrible and beautiful in actual battle. Every movement had purpose. Every strike was precise. The pirates fell back, surprised by the ferocity of the defense. But more kept coming, and Kael'thor kept fighting. But watching from the control room monitors, some of the station workers were not grateful. They were terrified. Not of the pirates, but of Kael'thor. Look at him, someone whispered. Look at how he fights. This is what the Varathians did during the wars. This is what they're capable of. He's saving us, Marcus said angrily. He's a monster, another voice said. He's just as violent as the rest of them. Marcus wanted to scream. Kael'thor was risking his life to protect people who hated him, and they still could not see past their prejudice. The battle lasted 2 hours. Finally, the pirates retreated back to their ships. Station security from other sectors had managed to regroup and push them back from multiple points. The Karviks decided the station was too well defended and left to find easier prey. When the all-clear sounded, Marcus ran to find Kael'thor. The Varathian was sitting against a wall, breathing heavily. His armor was scorched and dented. One of his arms hung at an odd angle, clearly injured. "You're hurt," Marcus said, kneeling beside him. "I will heal." Kael'thor looked down the corridor at the damage from the battle. "Did everyone survive?" "Yes, thanks to you. You saved a lot of lives today." Kael'thor was quiet for a moment. "They are still afraid of me." "Perhaps more now than before. They saw me fight. They saw what Varathians can do. They also saw you protect them. They saw you stand between them and danger." Marcus put his hand on Kael'thor's good arm. "You showed them what honor really means." A group of workers approached them cautiously. The supervisor was with them. She looked uncomfortable, her antennae twitching. "Kael'thor," she said formally, "on behalf of the cargo division, I want to thank you. Your actions saved many lives." Kael'thor nodded but said nothing. The supervisor shifted awkwardly, then walked away. The other workers followed, casting nervous glances back at the Varathian. "Thank you is a start," Marcus said. "It's not much, but it's a start." Over the next few days, something subtle began to change on the station. People still avoided Kael'thor, but the quality of their avoidance was different. It was not pure hatred anymore. It was complicated. Mixed with fear, yes, but also with reluctant respect. And for some, even grudging gratitude. The young Delphian engineer who had joined their chess games approached Marcus during a break. "Is Kael'thor okay?" she asked quietly. "I heard his arm was broken. He's healing. Varathians are tough," she hesitated. "During the attack, I was in the engineering bay. I saw the security footage. He could have left his position. He could have retreated to safety. But he stayed. Even when it looked like the pirates might overwhelm him, he stayed. That's who he is," Marcus said. "Shield of the innocent." "That's what his name means," the engineer nodded slowly. "I judged him. I was afraid of him because of what his people did. But he's not them, is he? No, he's himself. And he's one of the bravest people I've ever met." That evening, Marcus found a message on his personal terminal. It was anonymous, but the threat was clear. "You and your monster friend are not welcome here. We don't forget what the Varathians did. Distance yourself from him or face the consequences." Marcus deleted the message, but he felt a chill run down his spine. The old woman's warning had been right. There were people on this station who saw his friendship with Kael'thor as a betrayal. People who would not be swayed by heroic actions or chess games or honor. He thought about showing the message to Kael'thor, but decided against it. The Varathian had enough to worry about, and Marcus was not about to abandon his friend over anonymous threats. The next day at their usual lunch meeting, Marcus noticed Kael'thor seemed troubled. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked. "During the battle, I saw the way people looked at me when I fought. Not grateful, not relieved, terrified." Kael'thor set down his food untouched. "I thought that if I proved myself, if I showed them I was different, they would accept me. But I only reminded them of what they fear most. My strength, my capacity for violence." "Some people saw that," Marcus admitted, "but not everyone. The Delphian engineer asked about you. She said she saw you stay at your post when you could have retreated. She's starting to understand. One person, out of thousands on this station. Change starts with one person," Marcus said. "Then another. And another. It's slow, but it happens." He smiled. "It started with me, remember? One human willing to eat lunch with you. Now there's at least one more person willing to give you a chance. That's progress." Kael'thor looked at his friend. This small human who refused to give up hope even when logic suggested he should. And despite everything, he felt grateful. "You are either very wise or very foolish," Kael'thor said. Marcus grinned. "Can I be both?" They finished their lunch in comfortable silence. Two unlikely friends on a station full of fear and old hatred. The road ahead was still difficult. Many people would never accept Kael'thor. Some actively wanted to hurt him or anyone who defended him. But in that moment, sitting together in the cargo bay, they had something more powerful than fear or hatred. They had friendship. They had trust. And they had each other's backs. In the end, That would make all the difference. The second attack came 3 weeks later. This time it was not a small raid. 7 pirate ships appeared on the station's sensors, moving in attack formation. The Karvik Syndicate had returned with reinforcements. Station Command activated all emergency protocols. But everyone knew the truth. Epsilon Station could not withstand a sustained assault from 7 ships. They had survived the first attack through luck and the pirates' overconfidence. This time would be different. Marcus was helping evacuate civilians to the emergency shelters when he noticed something strange. A group of workers in the adjacent corridor were not evacuating. They were gathered around someone, arguing in hushed voices. He moved closer and recognized several of them. They were the ones who had sent him threatening messages. The ones who hated Kael'thor most openly. "This is our chance," one of them was saying. "While everyone is distracted, we can access his quarters. Plant the evidence." "Evidence?" another voice asked. "Communications logs. Encrypted messages. We make it look like he's been feeding information to the Karviks. That he's the reason they came back. That he's a spy." Marcus felt cold horror wash over him. They were going to frame Kael'thor. Turn him from a defender into a traitor in everyone's eyes. He had to warn Kael'thor. But as he turned to leave, someone grabbed his arm. A large cranian with scaled skin and sharp teeth. "Going somewhere, Chen?" the cranian asked. "You heard too much." "Let me go," Marcus said, trying to pull free. "Put him in storage compartment 7, the leader said. "We'll deal with him after the attack. Right now we have work to do." Marcus struggled, but the cranian was stronger. They dragged him to a storage room and locked him inside. The room was small and dark, filled with maintenance equipment. The door was solid metal, impossible to break through. He pounded on the door, but his voice was lost in the chaos of the evacuation alarms. Nobody would hear him. Nobody would find him until it was too late. Outside, the battle had begun. The station shook as the pirate ships opened fire. This time they were not just raiding. They were trying to cripple the station's defenses to force a surrender. Kael'thor fought at the main docking bay, coordinating the defense with other security officers. But something was wrong. The pirates seemed to know exactly where the weak points were. They were attacking with precision, targeting critical systems. It was almost as if someone had given them inside information. Then Kael'thor's communicator received an urgent message from Station Security Command. His presence was required immediately. Someone had found evidence of treason in his quarters. Encrypted communications with known pirates. Kael'thor felt his heart sink. He knew what this meant. He was being framed. But who would believe him? A Varathian warrior accused of betrayal? Everyone would accept it without question. It confirmed everything they already believed about his people. He could run. Try to escape the station before they arrested him. But that would make him look guilty. And more importantly, the station was under attack. People needed him even if they hated him. Even if they believed he was a traitor. He had a duty to protect them. Kael'thor ignored the summons and continued fighting. His forearms moved in deadly harmony, his weapons finding targets with perfect accuracy. The pirates were pushing hard, but he held his position. Then he noticed something. Marcus had not shown up for the evacuation. In all the chaos and all the fear, Kael'thor realized his friend was missing. He grabbed another security officer. "Have you seen Marcus Chen, the human cargo supervisor?" The officer shook her head. "No, everyone was supposed to evacuate. Maybe he's already in the shelters." But Kael'thor knew Marcus. He would not hide in a shelter during an attack. He would be helping, coordinating, making sure everyone else was safe first. If he was not visible, something was wrong. In the storage room, Marcus had stopped pounding on the door. His hands were bruised and bleeding, but the door had not budged. He leaned against the wall, breathing hard, trying to think. The station shook with another impact. Dust fell from the ceiling. If the station fell, he would die here, locked in this room. And worse, Kael'thor would be branded a traitor. His friend's name would be destroyed forever. He had to get out. Had to warn someone. Marcus searched the storage room frantically. Old equipment, spare parts, tools, then he found it. A maintenance panel in the wall. The access tunnels that ran through the station's infrastructure. The panel was sealed, but he found a pry bar among the tools. It took him 10 minutes of desperate work, but finally the panel came free. The tunnel beyond was barely wide enough for him to crawl through, but it was a way out. He pulled himself into the tunnel and started crawling toward the security office. His arms ached. His knees scraped against the metal. But he kept moving. Meanwhile, Kael'thor had left his post. The other security officers shouted at him to come back, but he ignored them. He ran through the corridors, searching for Marcus, his friend, the only person on this entire station who had ever shown him kindness. The pirates broke through the defense line. They poured into the station, spreading chaos. But Kael'thor barely noticed. He checked every corridor, every room, calling Marcus's name, then he heard it. A faint sound from a maintenance tunnel. Scratching. Movement. He tore the panel off the wall and found Marcus crawling through the tunnel, covered in dust and blood. Kael'thor, Marcus gasped. They're framing you. Planting evidence. You have to... I know, Kael'thor said, pulling Marcus free from the tunnel. I received the message. But right now, that does not matter. Are you hurt? I'm fine. But we have to prove your innocence. We have to find who really did this. The station shook violently. Somewhere close by, there was an explosion. Pirates were in the corridors now. Kael'thor could hear weapons fire getting closer. We need to fall back, Kael'thor said. The defense has collapsed. Everyone is retreating to the core sectors. Marcus shook his head. Not yet. The people who framed you, they're still here. Probably in your quarters, planting the final evidence. If we can catch them in the act, if we go there now, we will walk into an ambush. And there are pirates between us and my quarters. Marcus smiled grimly. Then I guess we'll have to go through them. Kael'thor looked at his friend. This human who was willing to risk everything to clear his name, who had crawled through maintenance tunnels while the station was under attack, who was now suggesting they fight their way through pirates to catch the people who had betrayed them both. You are the bravest fool I have ever met, Kael'thor said. Marcus picked up a weapon from a fallen security officer. He checked the charge even though he had minimal training. Learned from the best. They moved through the corridors together. Kael'thor led, his forearms ready, his warrior training guiding every step. Marcus followed close behind, his heart pounding but his resolve firm. The first group of pirates appeared around a corner. 5 Karviks heavily armed. They saw Kael'thor and raised their weapons. What happened next was a blur. Kael'thor moved with deadly grace, his weapons striking with perfect precision. But there were too many. One of the pirates got past his guard, aiming at Marcus. Marcus fired his weapon. The shot was clumsy, unpracticed, but it hit the pirate's shoulder. The pirate stumbled, giving Kael'thor time to finish the fight. When it was over, both of them were breathing hard. Kael'thor looked at Marcus with something like pride. You saved my life, Kael'thor said. You've saved mine more than once. Marcus replied. We're even. They continued toward Kael'thor's quarters. More pirates appeared, but each time they fought together. Kael'thor with his skill and strength. Marcus with his determination and surprising courage. Finally, they reached Kael'thor's door. It was open. Inside, 3 figures were hunched over a computer terminal, uploading false data. Marcus activated his recording device and stepped into the room. I think station security will be very interested in seeing this, Marcus said. The conspirators spun around, shocked. The Krenian who had locked Marcus in the storage room reached for his weapon, but Kael'thor was faster. In seconds, all 3 were disarmed and on the floor. Marcus sent the recording to Station Command with a priority override. The evidence was clear. The framing was exposed, and somewhere in the chaos of the battle, the truth had finally emerged. But the fight was far from over, and neither Kael'thor nor Marcus knew if they would survive to see justice done. The recording Marcus sent changed everything. Within minutes, Station Command broadcast the evidence to all security personnel. The conspirators were arrested, even as the battle raged around them. More importantly, Kael'thor's name was cleared, but the pirates were still coming. The station's defense was collapsing. Kael'thor and Marcus ran toward the command center, fighting through groups of Karviks at every turn. Marcus took a hit to his side, a glancing blow that burned through his uniform and left a deep cut. He stumbled, but Kael'thor caught him with one arm while fighting off attackers with the other 3. I can walk, Marcus said through gritted teeth. No, you cannot, Kael'thor replied. He lifted Marcus onto his back and kept moving. The human weighed almost nothing to the Varathian warrior. Hold on. They reached the command center to find Station Command in chaos. The defense coordinator was shouting orders, but it was clear they were losing. The pirates had breached multiple sectors. It was only a matter of time before they reached the core. Kyle Thor set Marcus down in a chair and approached the command console. The coordinator, a Tyrellian admiral, looked up at him with a mix of suspicion and desperate hope. "I saw your message," the admiral said. "You're not a traitor. But that doesn't solve our immediate problem. We're being overrun." Kyle Thor studied the tactical display. 7 pirate ships. Coordinated assault. They were attacking specific weak points in the station's structure. Then he saw it. The pattern. The pirates were not just raiding. They were trying to disable the station's power core. If they succeeded, life support would fail. Everyone on the station would die. "They are going for the core," Kyle Thor said. "They want to take the station intact, then ransom it back to the government. But to do that, they need to cut off our ability to self-destruct." The admiral's antennae twitched. "You're right, but we don't have enough security personnel to defend the core. Most of our forces are scattered across the station." "Then we rally them," Kyle Thor said. "Send a message to all security officers. Tell them to fall back to the core. We make our stand there. And who will lead this defense?" the admiral asked. "Who do we have with the tactical skill to coordinate a last stand?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew the answer, but nobody wanted to say it. Finally, the admiral looked at Kyle Thor directly. "You," she said. "You're a Varathian warrior. You were trained for this. Will you help us?" Kyle Thor looked around the command center, at the faces of people who had avoided him for months, who had whispered about him, who had believed the worst about him. Now they needed him. Now they were asking for his help. He could have said no, could have let them face the consequences of their prejudice. But that was not who he was. That was not what his honor demanded. "I will defend this station," Kyle Thor said. "I will defend these people, not because they deserve it, not because they have earned it, but because it is the right thing to do." From his chair, Marcus smiled despite his pain. That was his friend. That was the Varathian warrior who had chosen honor over bitterness, who had chosen to protect those who feared him. Kyle Thor took command. His voice echoed through every communicator on the station. He gave orders with calm authority, directing security forces to strategic positions around the power core. He coordinated defensive barriers. He identified choke points where small groups could hold off larger forces, and something remarkable happened. People listened. They followed his orders without question, because in that moment it did not matter that he was Varathian. It only mattered that he knew how to fight, how to think strategically, and how to give them a chance at survival. The pirates reached the core sector. The battle was fierce and desperate. Kyle Thor fought at the front lines, his forearms moving in perfect harmony. Other security officers fought beside him, no longer afraid, no longer suspicious. They had seen his honor. They had seen his courage. And now they trusted him. The young Delphian engineer who had asked about Kyle Thor appeared with a group of volunteers. They were not fighters, just civilians with tools and determination. They helped repair damaged barricades and sealed breach points. Marcus, despite his injury, coordinated evacuation routes and made sure medical supplies reached the defenders. He worked until he could barely stand, his side bleeding through makeshift bandages. The battle raged for hours, but slowly the tide began to turn. The defenders held their positions. The pirates could not break through, and when the station's distress signal finally reached a nearby military patrol, the Karviks decided to retreat rather than face reinforcements. When the all clear sounded, the command center erupted in cheers. They had survived. Against all odds, they had held the station. Kyle Thor found Marcus in the medical bay. The human was unconscious, finally giving in to exhaustion and blood loss. The medics assured Kyle Thor that his friend would recover, but he needed time to heal. Kyle Thor sat beside Marcus's bed and waited. It was all he could do. 3 days later, Marcus woke up. The first thing he saw was Kyle Thor, still sitting in the same chair, refusing to leave. "Hey," Marcus said weakly. "Did we win?" "We survived," Kyle Thor replied. "Thanks to you. You exposed the traitors. You warned me. You fought beside me." He reached out and gently touched Marcus's shoulder with one hand. "You risked your life for me." "That's what friends do," Marcus said simply. Over the next few weeks, as the station repaired and recovered, something changed. People approached Kyle Thor differently now, not with fear or suspicion, but with respect, some even with gratitude. The Tyrellian supervisor who had once warned Marcus about fraternizing came to visit him in the medical bay. I owe you an apology, she said. Both of you. I judged Kael'thor based on his species, not his character, and I tried to discourage your friendship because of my own prejudices. I was wrong, Marcus smiled. Better late than never. Station Command held a formal ceremony once Marcus had recovered. They awarded both Marcus and Kael'thor medals for heroism. But more importantly, they offered Kael'thor a permanent position as Chief of Security for Epsilon Station. The Admiral herself presented the offer. We need someone with your skills and honor to protect this station. Will you accept? Kael'thor looked out at the assembled crowd, workers from every species. People who had once avoided him. Now they were applauding. Now they were smiling. Not all of them, certainly. Some faces were still hard and cold, but enough had changed their minds. Enough had seen past their fear. I accept, Kael'thor said. That evening, Marcus and Kael'thor sat in their usual spot in the cargo bay. But this time, they were not alone. The Delphian engineer joined them, bringing her own food. A Zentari trader sat nearby, working on a datapad but clearly listening to their conversation. Even a few human workers gathered at a respectful distance, not quite ready to join but no longer avoiding. Look at that, Marcus said quietly. You have fans now. I have you to thank for that, Kael'thor said. You were the first. You took the risk when no one else would. You showed others that it was possible to look past species and see the individual. I just wanted someone to play chess with, Marcus said, grinning. Kael'thor's deep laugh rumbled through the cargo bay. It was a sound that had once frightened people. Now it made others smile. The Delphian engineer laughed too, and soon others joined in. News of what happened on Epsilon Station spread across the galaxy. The story of a Varathian warrior who defended those who hated him. The story of a human who refused to judge by species. The story of how one friendship changed an entire community. Other Varathians heard the story. Those who had been living in isolation, working menial jobs on forgotten stations, began to hope. If Kael'thor could find acceptance, perhaps they could too. Slowly, carefully, they began to emerge from the shadows. And on other stations, other humans began to ask themselves questions. If one person could make such a difference, what could they do? If Marcus Chen could bridge the gap between species divided by war and hatred, what bridges could they build? Months later, Marcus received a message from his sister back on Earth. She had read about what happened on Epsilon Station. She was proud of him, she said. But she was also confused. Why did you risk everything for someone everyone else was afraid of? She asked. Marcus thought about his answer for a long time. Finally, he replied with a simple truth. Because he was alone. Because everyone judged him for things he did not do. Because when I looked at him, I did not see a monster or a warrior or a member of a species that once caused terrible harm. I just saw someone who needed a friend, and that was enough. In the cargo bay of Epsilon Station, Kael'thor and Marcus sat together playing chess. Around them, the station bustled with activity. Ships came and went. Traders haggled. Workers moved cargo. But in this small corner, two friends simply enjoyed each other's company. The Delphian engineer had joined their regular lunch meetings. A few others had started coming too, drawn by curiosity at first, then staying because they enjoyed the conversation. Slowly, a community was forming. Different species, different backgrounds, but united by a simple idea that individuals mattered more than history. Check, Marcus said. Moving his bishop, Kael'thor studied the board, then moved his knight with one of his four hands. Checkmate, Marcus groaned. One of these days I'm going to beat you.